Hello and welcome. This is World Business Report. You're watching on News9 Live. I am Krishna Kumar. All right, we begin this edition of World Business Report with chip maker NVIDIA, which continued its unstoppable rise, hitting a market value in excess of $1.8 trillion, whereas Lyft suffered a setback with a significant typo in its key profit margin metric. Take a look at this weekly roundup of the biggest stories in business and finance from across the world of the week that just went by.
From the rise and rise of NVIDIA to a costly typo at Lyft, this is the week in numbers. Just over $1.8 trillion was the market value hit by the AI chip champion NVIDIA on Wednesday. That put it ahead of Google parent Alphabet as the third most valuable firm in the US. Only Microsoft and Apple are worth more, with the Windows maker in top spot at over $3 trillion. 500 basis points is how much Lyft said a key profit margin metric would rise. Only, oops, that was a typo, and the real figure was 50. The mistake sparked a rollercoaster ride for the stock and could leave the ride-hailing app facing legal action from investors who got burned. Summit Place President Liz Miller says it's an unprecedented error.
I can't remember in my career seeing that kind of mistake in a major company's earnings release.
0.4% was the surprise drop in Japanese GDP over the latest quarter, when analysts had predicted a solid increase. The fall for a second straight quarter put the country in recession. It also saw Japan lose its title as the world's third biggest economy, with Germany overtaking. $1 trillion is the total value now invested in Bitcoin. The number hits that level for the first time since late 2021, helped by flows of cash into new US exchange-traded funds featuring the e-money. And 21 million is how many PlayStation consoles Sony now thinks it will sell over the full year. That's a big cut from earlier estimates, and comes after disappointing holiday season sales. A week earlier, rival Nintendo actually raised forecasts for its aging Switch console.
Now, that was how the week went by, but here are the big stories to watch out for in business and finance from across the world in this week going forward. Take a look at this Reuters report.
From the anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine to NVIDIA's continued role as the main character, these are the stories to watch in business and finance. February 24th marks 2 years since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Aside from the human tragedy, the rebuilding cost alone is now estimated to have reached almost $500 billion. While markets have long overcome their initial panic, the political and economic impact is still being felt. Fears of a global recession seem to have fallen away, mostly because the U.S. economy has proven so resilient. The U.S. and Eurozone PMIs hit 6-month highs in January. And emerging markets outside China, notably India and the Middle East, are strong. Business activity data out globally from Thursday should give a better picture of what's happening beyond the U.S. Markets in China return from the Lunar New Year holiday on Monday, and investors will be watching what Beijing does next to shore up its battered stock market. A decision from the Bank of China on its benchmark lending rates is expected. Home prices land on Friday, which will show just how deep the downturn in the property sector is. NVIDIA reports quarterly earnings on February 21st. After its stock more than tripled in 2023, the chipmaker at the center of AI excitement has seen its shares soar another roughly 50% so far this year. Such mammoth stock gains stand to raise the bar for its results, and any disappointment potentially has a broad market fallout given the company's growing heft.
Now, stocks on Wall Street fell in its last trading session on Friday following a hotter than expected producer prices report which came in higher, dashing hopes for an imminent interest rate cut by American Central Bank, the US Federal Reserve. Despite optimism from upbeat economic data, concerns over inflation persist in the US. Meanwhile, earnings saw Applied Materials rising while Roku and DoorDash faced setbacks. This Reuters report puts the action on Wall Street into perspective. Take a look.
U.S. stocks fell on Friday after a hotter-than-expected producer prices report appeared to erode any remaining hopes for imminent interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve. The Dow dipped nearly 0.4%, the S&P 500 shed nearly 0.5%, and the Nasdaq dropped 0.8%. After 5 consecutive weeks of gains, all 3 indexes posted a weekly decline. A Labor Department report showed producer prices increased more than expected in January, which, along with an uptick in the consumer price index days before, fueled fears inflation was picking up after months of cooling. But the latest economic data, including Friday's consumer sentiment reading, which remained optimistic, showed the economy is still heading in the right direction, says Brian Vendig, president of MJP Wealth Advisors.
But all in all, we still have a very healthy jobs market. We still have publicly traded companies because we are still in the midst of earnings, telling us that earnings is going to grow over the balance of the year. And we still have an economic backdrop of Fed officials reminding us that they're going to cut rates as the year goes on, but they just need to get a little bit more confidence that inflation is continuing to come down year over year accordingly. So all in all, I don't think this really changes the economic picture for the markets or the economy. And I think going into the weekend, that's a good news signal.
In earnings news, Applied Materials jumped nearly 6.5% after the semiconductor equipment supplier forecast better than expected second quarter revenue on strong demand for advanced chips used in artificial intelligence. Shares of Roku slumped nearly 24% after forecasting a bigger first quarter loss. Crypto exchange Coinbase Global jumped almost 9% on posting its first quarterly profit since 2021. And shares of DoorDash dropped 8% as the delivery firm forecast a quarterly profitability metric below expectations, hurt by higher labor costs.
Now, more than 1,600 jobs are set to be cut at Nike as the sportswear giant aims to reduce expenses amidst challenges like higher rental costs of its stores and high interest rates. Also, lower orders from retailers and competition from brands like Hoka and On Holding have led to this latest job cut decision. Nike has outlined a $2 billion savings plan, with layoffs expected to primarily affect corporate positions, excluding in-store distribution center or innovation team roles. More details in this report. Carmakers are set to see a slower push for green initiatives in the United States of America as the Biden administration in the U.S. plans to ease tough emission targets set by the country. Last year's proposed 56% reduction in new vehicle emissions by the year 2032 and a 60% electric vehicle sales target by the year 2030 faced opposition from major companies as well as labor unions in the US. This Reuters report tells you all about it.
Car makers may not have to go green quite so fast in the US. Reuters sources say the Biden administration is set to water down tough targets set for cutting emissions. Last year, the Environmental Protection Agency had proposed requiring a 56% reduction in new vehicle emissions by 2032, and automakers would have been required to aim for 60% of their sales being electric vehicles by 2030. Those proposals were met with pushback from big firms as well as labor unions. A trade body representing General Motors, Ford, and other giants called the targets neither reasonable nor achievable. The Union of Auto Workers called for the measures to be phased in more gradually. It argues that the infrastructure is not in place for the mass adoption of EVs, which it says are also still too costly for many consumers. Washington appears to have listened. The Reuters sources say the EPA will now slow the pace of new emissions requirements. They say its new proposals could be made public as soon as next month. Environmental rules have emerged as a political battleground, with former Republican President Donald Trump arguing that green targets threaten auto industry jobs. Even so, the UAW has recently endorsed Joe Biden for this year's presidential election.
Away from that, the recently announced major sports streaming collaboration between Disney, Fox and Warner Brothers Discovery now faces scrutiny from the U.S. Department of Justice, according to media reports in the U.S. This joint service aimed at younger viewers across the world boasts of rights to many big professional and college sporting events. This Reuters report tells you more.
The sports streaming team-up between Disney, Fox and Warner Bros. Discovery is set to be scrutinized by the U.S. Department of Justice. That's according to a report by Bloomberg Law on Thursday. The report cited two sources close to the matter that say the DOJ is concerned a platform from the three entertainment giants could harm consumers, sports leagues and competitors. The report also cites the sources saying the Justice Department will review the deal's terms once it's finalized. The joint sports service was announced earlier this month, planned for an autumn launch. They say it will be targeted at younger viewers. The companies have rights to a wide range of professional and college sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, FIFA World Cup, and college competitions. Fubo, a sports-focused streaming service, called for scrutiny of the new joint venture soon after it was announced. In a statement, Fubo highlighted the media partner's significant market share, reportedly some 60 to 85% of all sports content. Fubo declined to comment on Thursday. Fox, Warner Bros. Discovery and Disney could not be immediately reached for comment, while the Justice Department declined to comment.
Shifting focus away from the US to China. China's challenger to Airbus and Boeing aircraft, the C919, has made its debut outside China at the Singapore Airshow, manufactured by Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, or COMAC. This narrow-body jet, showcased alongside other planes and aerial displays, had exhibitors marking their first appearance at the event, signaling China's push to compete globally in aviation. Take a look at this.
China's challenger to Airbus and Boeing's passenger jets made its first trip outside Chinese territory on Sunday as it staged a flyby at the Singapore Airshow. The narrow-body C919 is made by the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, or COMAC. It was one of two commercial planes flying at the Airshow's media preview on Sunday, which also featured aerobatics by teams from the South Korean, Indian and Indonesian air forces. According to the Singapore Economic Development Board, it's the first time Chinese exhibitors have taken part in the biennial show. It's also the first major international industry event since last month's blowout of a door plug on a 737 MAX 9 pushed Boeing into yet another safety crisis. China has invested heavily to try and break the grip Airbus and Boeing have on the global market. With the two Western playmakers struggling to meet production demand and Boeing ensnared in a string of crises, the aviation industry is watching how COMAC positions itself as a viable alternative. China has signaled plans for a push to boost the C919 and its maker's footprint domestically and internationally this year. The first of now 4 C919s began flying with China Eastern Airlines last year. So far, it's only certified within China. But the country's aviation authority said last month it would try and get the C919 validated this year by the European Union's regulator after starting the process in 2018. According to Chinese media reports, a COMAC official said in January the company will invest tens of billions of yuan to expand C919 production capacity over the next 3 to 5 years.
Now, gaming giant Nintendo's stock plunged over 6% in early trading on Monday following reports of a delay in the release of its next generation console expected to replace the aging Switch console. Initially anticipated for later this year, this new device is now reportedly postponed until the year 2025.
Nintendo stock tumbled over 6% in early trades on Monday. The slide came after media reports that a replacement for its aging Switch console will be delayed. A new device had been expected later this year, but now reportedly won't come until 2025. The Switch has been a massive hit for Nintendo. Earlier this month, the firm even raised its sales outlook for the console. Its life cycle has been extended by a string of hit games, including last year's new Legend of Zelda title. But it's coming up to 8 years on the market and is widely seen as in need of an update. Nintendo has never revealed its plans for a successor, beyond saying that it is always working on new hardware and software. Last week, Japanese rival Sony slashed sales forecasts for its PlayStation 5 console. That followed weaker than expected sales over the holiday shopping season.
Now, Japanese video game Palworld has become a global sensation since its late January debut on platforms like PCs and the Xbox, with 19 million downloads in less than 2 weeks. Some liken it to Pokemon with guns, sparking legal debates. While players find originality in Palworld's gameplay, similarities have caught the attention of the Pokemon company, known for fiercely protecting its own intellectual property.
It's gone viral around the globe. Japanese video game Palworld debuted in late January, made for platforms including PCs and the Microsoft Xbox. Less than 2 weeks after launch, it had been downloaded 19 million times, a number most titles only hit after years on the market, if ever. But the game could soon prove popular with lawyers too, because some say it's just Pokemon with guns, raising the spectre of a courtroom shootout. In Tokyo, video game fan Komei Sato has been playing Palworld, and he says there are arguments both ways.
実際パルワールドをプレイして、ポケモンに似ている部分もあるんですけども、そうじゃない。
When you actually play Palworld, there are some ways that it resembles Pokemon, but there are also original things. Like players are not building things in Pokemon, but they are in Palworld. So in that sense, I don't think it's exactly the same as Pokemon. Palworld can be enjoyed as Palworld.
パルワールドとして楽しめてるかなっていうところですね。
The game has a familiar premise, allowing players to capture and train cute creatures, but these are called pals, and the Pokemon company seems to have taken notice. In late January, it said it would take action over any infringement of its intellectual property rights. The statement didn't mention by name Palworld or its maker, Japanese firm Pocket Pair, but Pokemon is one of the world's most valuable media franchises, and fiercely protected. Industry analyst Serkan Toto at Kantan Games says he has little doubt what is coming.
I am as sure as I can be that both companies, Nintendo and the Pokemon company, at least are looking very, very much into this case and maybe take legal action going forward. And I think that if they don't take legal action against Palworld and the developer, then my rhetorical question would be, when will they ever take legal action against another company?
Pocket Pair has denied all accusations of plagiarism. In a social media post, Chief Executive Takuro Mizobe said the company had been the subject of libelous comments. Nintendo, which is among backers of the Pokemon company, has said it does not comment on individual cases. As for gamer Sato, he just says Palworld is a great game and hopes he gets to keep playing.
Away from that, Russian forces claimed full control of the Soviet-era coke plant in Avdiivka in Ukraine, marking their biggest battlefield gain in 9 months since the conflict began. Reuters located video footage matching satellite imagery of the plant, though the date of the footage remains unverified. This advance is Russia's largest since capturing Bakhmut back in May 2023 and nearly 2 years after Putin's troops entered Ukraine. The Defense Ministry reported a 9-kilometer or 5-mile-long advance along the 1,000-kilometer or 620-mile-long front line, with ongoing progress after urban combat. Ukraine withdrew its soldiers to prevent full encirclement after fierce fighting. Putin hailed the fall of Avdiivka as a significant victory and praised the Russian troops. Meanwhile, it was a landmark victory for supporters of LGBTQ rights. Greece's parliament approved a bill allowing same-sex civil marriage that was greeted with cheers by onlookers in the Greek parliament, and dozens gathered on the streets of Greece's capital, Athens. Take a look at this.
Greece legalized same-sex marriage on Thursday, making it one of the first Orthodox Christian countries to allow them.
Ναι, 176.
The country's parliament approved the bill, with more than two-thirds of its 254 lawmakers voting yes. On the streets of Athens, supporters of the bill celebrated as the landmark vote passed, finally giving same-sex couples the right to marry and right to adopt children, coming after decades of campaigning by LGBTQ groups.
I'm very happy. As someone who grew up in the countryside, this is a dream I have waited for many years, just like all of us. Literally, I am at a loss for words. I'm no longer a second-class citizen. We had the same obligations, but now we also have more of the same rights.
Recent polls show Greeks are split on the issue. Clerics of the powerful Orthodox Church believe homosexuality is a sin and has strongly opposed same-sex marriage. Many in the LGBTQ community believe the bill does not go far enough. It does not overturn obstacles for couples with members from the community in using assisted reproduction methods. They will still be barred from surrogate pregnancies, though the bill recognizes children already born through the method abroad. In recent years, Greece took small steps towards legalizing same-sex marriage. In 2015, it allowed civil partnership among same-sex couples, and in 2017, it gave legal recognition to gender identity. 2 years ago, it also banned conversion therapy for minors aimed at suppressing a person's sexual orientation.
Away from all of that to the world of entertainment, where at the BAFTAs, or the British Oscars, Oppenheimer triumphed with top honors for Best Film as well as Best Director, alongside 5 other awards, including one for lead actress Cillian Murphy and supporting actor Robert Downey Jr. Christopher Nolan winning his first BAFTA for directing highlighted nuclear proliferation concerns in his acceptance speech. Meanwhile, Poor Things also stood out, winning 5 prizes, including one for lead actress Emma Stone. This Reuters report tells you all about it.
Oppenheimer won big at the BAFTAs on Sunday, taking the top honors for Best Film and Best Director, as well as 5 other awards at the UK's answer to the Oscars. The 3-hour epic about the making of the atomic bomb also won awards for leading actor Cillian Murphy, who portrays American theoretical physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, as well as supporting actor Robert Downey Jr., editing, cinematography, and original score.
And the BAFTA goes to Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan, who took home his first BAFTA for directing, used his time on stage to talk about nuclear proliferation.
In the real world, there are all kinds of individuals and organizations who have fought long and hard to reduce the number of nuclear weapons in the world. And since its peak in 1967, they've done it by almost 90%. Of late, that's gone the wrong way. And so in accepting this, I do just want to acknowledge their efforts and point out that they show the necessity and the potential of efforts for peace.
Another standout this year was the sex-charged gothic comedy Poor Things, winning 5 prizes overall, including the award for leading actress Emma Stone. Davine Joy Randolph won the supporting actress prize for her role in The Holdovers, a comedy set in a boys' boarding school.
There have been countless Marys throughout history who have never got the chance to wear a beautiful gown and stand on this stage here in London. Telling her story is a responsibility that I do not take lightly, and this award is a beautiful reminder of how her story has rippled through the world. Thank you so much. Thank you.
The BAFTAs have kept up Oppenheimer's domination of award season this year. It swept the Golden Globes with 5 wins in January and leads nominations for the Academy Awards next month.